Hi, I'm Joy Lilly, and I wrote this book, Carefree Quilts, a freestyle twist on classic designs. I'm going to show you how to make my favorite block. It's called the foreplay block. Here it is, because you make 4 of them in one shot. This is what the block actually looks like. And this one is just 4 of them with a little piano keys in the background. So if you need to make a quick baby quilt, this is a great choice. Start by cutting 2 pieces of fabric 14.5 inches and stack them both face up, and smack dab in the middle stack a pair of accent colors. That's these little tiny squares here. These are about 5.5 inches. I'm going to make 2 vertical cuts, and they don't have to be perfectly parallel to the edge because this is Carefree. This is a really good project for beginning quilters because things don't have to match exactly and they still work just fine. So what I'm doing is I'm making 2 cuts, a little bit wonky, but they're just catching the accent colors in the middle. Okay, and I'm going to go turn it sideways and do the same thing again. There we go. Okay, now I just managed to cut the edges of those so we saved most of the centerpiece. Now I'm going to take the 2 main colors off the bottom and leave the 2 new colors in place. And now I'm going to switch the corner blocks. There's one. And lo and behold, we're getting a 9 patch out of this. One more. There we go. Okay, so there's one 9 patch. So you can. Okay, so all the pieces have been moved to a piece of flannel fabric in case the cat decides to come by. They're not going to go anywhere until I get to them. And now I'm going to sew the seams and turn this into 3 strips for each block. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, and I don't know about you, but my 1/4 inches aren't always the same on 2 different days. So the measurements that we're cutting are going to take that into consideration, and everything will be fine. So I'm going to do my best to match up the corners. Put a pin in it and check it a 1/4 inch down. See how they match up? One seam to the left, to the right, and one seam to the left. And I'm going to sew the whole row. Take out the pin as I get to it. So I've got my 9 patch all put together, and now I'm going to press it first on the back. And pressing is different from ironing. Pressing is down and stay, where ironing is kind of gliding, and we don't want to glide because it'll stretch the fabric. So I'm going to flip it over and press the front in a sec, try to get the seams all to lay in whatever direction they're happiest. Let's flip it to the front and do the same thing in case there are any little tucks pressed in. Now this is my main fabric. There's going to be more of this than any other one, so I chose all the colors to match this fabric, and I'm simply going to lay out my square on top of it and cut around it. Don't even need a ruler because we all get to trim later. Cut around it. Now I'm going to cut it approximately in quarters, more or less down the middle, but a little crooked is okay too. So here's one cut, and without moving it, here's the other cut. I don't want to make these too skinny, sort of in the middle, but sort of irregular because this is Carefree Quilting. Okay, now simply take 2 opposite corners and flip them. And now once again I have 2 sets. Here's the first set. 2 whole blocks. Now when I do this with my other 9 patch, I'm going to have 2 more hole blocks, and there's your 4. Before I sew this together, I'm going to pin it. And if there's a difference in size, make sure the inner corners are the ones that match. The center corners with the little accent spot need to match. The outsides are going to get trimmed anyway. Now I'm going to put the centers together. This is the only place where I really want to be careful matching the centers, so I'll show you how to do it. Here are the 2 pieces, and there's the center. And then I'm going to look in here, a 1/4 inch in, just like I did last time, and make sure the centers are matched. Put a pin in it. Sew this row together and I'll have a whole block. So except for trimming, here's the complete block. So here's my second 9 patch all put together, and I'm going to do the same thing with it. Sew this together, I have 2 blocks, as easy as that. Now it's time to trim the blocks to 12.5 inches. I like to put my square on the point so I can get as many angles as possible before turning the block. And rotate it 180 degrees. Line it up on the cut edge. And all of the blocks in my book are made with measurements a little extra big, so there's wiggle room depending on how big your seams are. My seams must have been pretty big because there was very little to cut off. So here we go. I use a 12.5 inch square. If you don't have one, the grids on your board will work just fine with a straight ruler. So I've got my 4 blocks, and I'm going to arrange them in what I call the square dance pattern. It's the same pattern as on this big quilt here, with the 4 smaller centers and the background fabric on the outside edges. But there's another way to do it. Just rotate 2 of them 90 degrees, and you have a totally different look. Add a border to that, and you've got a baby quilt in an afternoon. Here's another idea. Kind of an interesting zigzag table runner. And in my book it's made with the flower block, but it can be made with any block in the book, and the instructions for how to finish it with these zigzags and no binding in the easiest possible technique for finishing a quilt, called pillowcasing, are included in the instructions for the table runner. Now, that's an important point because any block in the book can be turned into the table runner, a quilt, a tote bag, or anything you like. It's kind of a unique feature of my book, Carefree Quilts, a freestyle twist on classic designs. It's available on my website for only $20 plus shipping, autographed. Happy Carefree Quilting!